Castlevania Symphony of the Night is one of the greatest and most influential games of all time. An absolute classic that created. It is literally the Vania half of the aptly named Metroidvania genre. So, with a legacy like that, there's clearly only one guaranteed, surefire way to improve upon it. With waifus! And also co-op, but mostly the waifus. Guardians Demon Purge, also known as Grimm Guardians Demon Purge for everyone outside of the US, for basically every system under the sun, brought to you by our good friends at Inti Creates, is a side-scrolling action game that skirts the line between traditional platformer and full-on Metroidvania, and is as much an homage to Symphony of the Night as it is a comedic fanfiction. Basically taking the characters from one of their other franchises and just asking them, what is a man? I'ma lick you! Apparently a very horny little pile of secrets. But enough talk! Let's drink to that. So, while the general setup of the game starts out basically the same as most classic Vania games, you know, Dracula's castle appears, we gotta send it back from whence it came, yada 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 yada. Guardians, if I haven't already made it abundantly clear, doesn't exactly take itself seriously. Though, arguably, neither does Castlevania, but still. The game plays up a lot of character interactions for laughs, which, honestly, it does incredibly well. We genuinely broke out laughing at a handful of these jokes, which, by the by, not exactly the crudest, but still not for kids. Yeah, definitely not for kids, but it does establish a tone that is in stark contrast of, honestly, what I think most Castlevania fans would expect at first, despite its outward appearance. So, you know, fair warning. And who could really blame you for going in with certain expectations, as you put Guardians side by side with any of the other Vania games, and if you didn't know any better, it'd be pretty easy to mistake the gals here for a true Castlevania title, as they've clearly spared no expense capturing that classic style. From the gothic architecture of the castle, which is complete with lamps that you gotta smack for energy, and walls that are not containing pork chops. Hold up. Are hearts actually health in this game? I don't know how I feel about that. Then there's the clearly inspired cover art, the absolutely gorgeous character designs, and honestly, I love this art style in general. The lines, the color, oh, it is fantastic. Mwah. And sealing the deal are these beautifully detailed sprites that look like they could have been ripped straight from Symphony of the Night itself. Look, they've even got Alucard's little after image effect when they move. Nice. And the same can be said about the music, which, while it never quite captures the heights of Bloody Tears, but to be fair, how many games really do? It still has that classic Vania vibe, adding a layer of eeriness as you explore. Except for when it's embracing its anime side, though it's not too often. Musically, at least. Though, if they did screw up with the audio a bit, and honestly what I'm most disappointed about, is that apparently the Japanese version is fully voice acted, where the English version only gets small snippets. Regardless, I bet you all know the old saying, looks, and I guess sound too in this case, are only skin deep. It's what's on the inside that counts, and there are some castle-sized differences here that set Guardians apart from its inspirational roots, giving it its own identity, for better or worse, with the first major one appearing even before you enter the castle: the difficulty options. And come on, what gamer doesn't love options? And I bring this up at all, and especially early, because I really want to put this out there. Guardians understands its audience, with the intent of having its cake and eating it too, by appealing to both the modern and retro gamers alike, as it offers up 2 difficulty settings right out the gate that go beyond the simple cranking of stats on friends and foes alike. Modern mode ditches the classic life system, letting you run headfirst over and over into danger without having to constantly look back, as well as removing the knockback from when you take damage, aka ditching that NES level difficulty, which any veteran vampire hunter worth their salt will tell you that knockback combined with bottomless pits are more dangerous than death itself. The veteran mode, on the other hand, is exactly what you'd expect, frustration and all, though maybe not Castlevania 3 levels of it, mind you. That's actually for the higher difficulty settings you gotta unlock. Let's be rational here. But still, I think it's really interesting that they'd even call it Veterans Mode, considering Inti Creates has no classic titles like this themselves, so they know that they're aiming for the vampire hunters that Konami has abandoned. No pachinko machines here, people. And it only goes up from there, with more challenging difficulties, loads of hidden unlockables, and even alternate endings that will keep you busy for a while. Jumping into the action, the next major change to the formula, or at least one that doesn't get much use in the Vania games, is the combination of our heroines, Maya and Shinobu, a pair of demon hunting sisters that must combine their abilities to break the curse that has been placed upon their high school. So, both girls play very differently from each other. Utilizing origami to make various weapons, Maya is our melee attacker, getting up close and personal. And surprisingly, she has a smaller health bar despite the fact that she's usually the one in harm's way. But I guess that's what skillfully dodging is for. Plus, when she's crouched or crawling through tight spaces, she can still attack, where her sister cannot.
Sheesh, my turn!
Shinobu is our long-range fighter, and by that, I mean she's packing heat! Screw the classic holy arrows, it's all about that demon-slaying machine gun. Perfect for bringing down foes that are blocking platforms that you're trying to get across, and just look at that ammo clip. Are we sure she's not American? Though, unfortunately, it's not without its limitations. You do have to manually reload clips, which of course leaves you vulnerable. And initially, you can't shoot up or at an angle, because reasons. Still, they cover each other's weaknesses excellently, and you are able to swap between them with a mere click of a button. But, in an interesting twist, this game actually follows TMNT rules. Meaning that each girl has their own health bar, but when one hits 0, they're gone. Sort of. Not really. If one of the duo falls, you get sent back to the previous room with the only remaining girl. But if you can reach your fallen partner, you have the ability to revive her, which is an interesting take on the mechanic to be sure. Though reviving your partner works exactly how you think it does when playing co-op, which hell yeah. And honestly, what might be my favorite element of this title that is unlike all of the other Castlevania games, except Harmony of Despair, Guardians has local 2-player co-op. And technically, it can have online co-op if you're playing the PC version, with remote play or parsec. Though, I'd like to point out that when me and my buddy were playing online co-op via remote play, we were getting occasional slowdown. Not that bad, but it was happening, and we've never had that happen with any other game before. So, something to consider. And I'd also highly consider choosing a teammate you can work well with, as the co-op mechanics will both help and hinder you both. Now, the upsides are the more obvious ones here. Both players on screen means more attacks slaying demons. You can revive your fallen ally on the spot instead of getting sent back, assuming the body's not at the bottom of the pit. And you can even use each other as platforms to reach greater heights earlier on. But the more unique and arguably neatest trick in your arsenal is linking to your partner. Similar to, say, New Super Mario Bros. Of all games, either player can immediately warp to their partner and just float around them, which honestly is a fantastic mechanic. If one of you is better at platforming than the other, just let them go first and you're both there. Don't feel like waiting for an obstacle? Miss a jump? It's great! Though, be warned, if the player in control bites it, you both perish. And this is certainly worth mastering, as the co-op platforming is also another double-edged sword. Though it has nothing to do with the controls or the movement, as this game controls wonderfully. Honestly, it just feels right. Though, these are the people who worked on the Zero games after all, it's to be expected. But what I really mean is that as a duo, you can cheese your way to greater heights that you couldn't reach early on when you're playing solo by simply toadstooling off each other. Though that can also get really frustrating in the heat of battle when you're trying to dodge an enemy's attack only to land on your partner's head by mistake, taking an unneeded hit. Doubly so when you're on higher difficulties with knockback. Ugh. So a bit of communication and coordination really helps, especially since you'll be sharing a lot, like lives and mostly magic. As you progress through the castle, you'll unlock multiple sub-weapons for each girl, powered by the magic bar in the upper right corner, that again, you share. And like in most Metroidvania titles, you need these sub-weapons or new powers not only to help in battle, but for reaching new areas and even more power-ups. But here is where the game heavily differs from its contemporaries. Maybe even so much so that you might not actually consider it a true Metroidvania. And that's because Grimm Guardians is pretty linear overall. Instead of traversing an entire castle, searching through every nook and cranny for new paths, and using your sub-weapons to make progress, the castle is actually broken up into zones, almost like levels. Though it's probably best to just think of them as mini-castles, littered with minor offshoots, with each having primarily two paths to the end, though one is always locked until after you've beaten the area. So yeah. And while you can go back to those paths at any time after getting the right unlock, there's really no need. As at the halfway point of the game, in what might be the game's attempt at the upside down castle moment, you are sent back to the start and essentially have to retread the same areas. Now here is your opportunity to take that second path that was originally locked. And obviously I recommend doing that, because really, why would you want to redo the same area again? Though, that's your choice. But either way, you are once again pitted against the same bosses for the same areas. And while they are harder with new movesets, the way the narrative works really does make it feel like the second half of the game is just retreading water, giving the later half a really padded feel. Especially if you're going for the extra endings, then oh wow, is it way worse. Fortunately though, the final area and boss does break up that sensation, so the game still ends on a high note. Especially if you go for the silly ending. While it may have its differences, there is no denying that Grimm Guardians' Demon Purge wears its inspiration on its sleeves, toting that Symphony of the Night style while trying to capture the beloved Castlevania feel. And you know what? It pulls it off spectacularly, while still maintaining its own identity through the narrative. And the way I see it is, if Konami doesn't want to make any more Castlevania games, then clearly Inti Creates is up to the challenge. Yeah, this is real glass. I'm not throwing it.